My name's Nick Dickens. I'm from Wakefield. I work at the Institute of Cancer Research in Sutton, which is just south of London. I work in a leukemia research lab. I'm a genome biologist, which means I use all sorts of genetic information, genomic information, which is all DNA from patients, to improve the treatment and diagnosis of different types of leukemia. The same genes are in every cell in your body. And if that's the case, what makes your heart cells different from your skin cells and makes them different from your eye cells? And it's not just what genes are there, but whether they're on or off and their levels of activity. This activity is called expression. Now this chip measures gene expression. I went up to Glasgow. I tried to talk about some of the work I do with leukemia in the first round, and it was difficult to sort of get the audience into that because I wasn't practiced at it. So for the second one I talked about a gene called CD36, which is a fat transporter in cells, but it's also, it turns out, it's a taste receptor, and depending what version you have, it may determine a preference for what types of fat you like. I went for lunch today and I'd packed in my bag this lovely salad. I went for a little walk and I walked past somewhere where I could get chips. And you can see from what I'm carrying that clearly there's no chips and there's a big bag of salad left. The decision that I made. Moving on from looking at genes that control the way we put on weight, I'm going to delve deeper into the genome and look at something that's close to all of our hearts, cholesterol, and a whole group of genes that affect the way that our bodies deal with cholesterol in our diets and the cholesterol that's produced by the body itself. But genes, the bit we know about, is just 3%. It's a tiny fraction of the genome. Now what's left? Well, if we look at it, a whole chunk of it, 40%, this is kind of the history of the human genome. It's a result of a lot of retroviral infections and a lot of things that have moved about and shaped human evolution. So we kind of understand this. But we're left with what is most of the genome. And we don't really know what a lot of this does. But we do know it's important.
You've just won the Scottish national final of Nesta Famelab 2007. How are you feeling?
Fantastic. I can't believe it, to be honest. I thought everybody was so brilliant. I don't know how they made their minds up. I really don't.
What's been the best thing about today?
Learning, seeing, again, just, you know, looking at the way you talk and just learning little bits off different people. I want to try and bring out some of the stories from genes and the human genome and DNA, because it's just fascinating and we don't hear all that much about it. So I want to try and find a gene, or a couple of genes, because it's 5 minutes, that I think, you know, people are going to be interested in. So I'm still playing with ideas, and hopefully, you know, some of the things I learned this weekend will help with that. My favourite example is obesity, and there are so many things going on in obesity, and there are hundreds of genes and so much we don't understand. And sometimes, you know, we hear in the news there's this gene for obesity, that gene for obesity, there's an association between this group of people and obesity, and it gets really confusing. You know, I didn't expect the genome inquisition. Nobody expects the genome inquisition. Our chief gene for fat is leptin. Leptin and insulin. Insulin and leptin. Our two genes for fat are leptin and insulin, and possibly CD36. Our three genes for fat are insulin.